What's going on there, folks? Good evening. It's the Earthmaster here on the live stream with an update video here on this Saturday night. It is September 10th, 2022. It's about 8:08 p.m. California time here along the West Coast. Saturday night update. Quite the active day across the globe here, at least in this section of the globe today. Seen quite a bit of earthquake activity, some large-scale movement as well. The latest quake, though, shows a 1.3 out here in Southern California. Things kind of lighten up here along the West Coast as well. Let's go ahead and check out the latest activity here on the USGS map. We're going to start off with that 7.6 earthquake. Originally coming in as a 7.7, so just a slight downgrade on an earthquake there near Papua New Guinea. Now, this area did see a little bit of swarming here over the past week just to the west. And I believe that was associated with a lot of pressure gradients here in this region. This depth here, about 90 kilometers, so somewhat deep, but it was felt pretty broadly over the area with some significant areas affected far as the landslide estimates go and liquefaction estimates. Okay, so here is the tectonic summary that is put out by a geologist here at the USGS regarding this earthquake. The September 10, 2022 M7.6 Papua New Guinea earthquake occurred as a result of normal faulting at a depth of approximately 20 kilometers beneath eastern Papua New Guinea near the northern edge of the Australia Plate. Focal mechanism solutions indicate that the rupture occurred on an east-striking steeply dipping fault or a northwest striking shallow dipping fault. At the location of the earthquake, the Australia Plate moves towards the east-northeast relative to the Pacific Plate at a velocity of about 100 mm per year. So a pretty high accumulated stress rate for this region. Earthquakes in this geographical region are generally associated with the large-scale convergence of these two major plates and with the complex interactions of several associated microplates. So definitely seen quite the activity. Papua New Guinea experiences a high rate of seismic activity with 78 events of M6 occurring within 250 kilometers of today's update. So let's look at the activity that's kind of kicked up here on the USGS catalog. This here, I just pulled up 7.0 and above here for the Papua New Guinea area. Just basically drew a little square here in the search catalog option, which is pretty cool. You can go back and look at all the historical earthquakes, and there's a lot of information on each one of these earthquakes as well. Here's today's earthquake, located right here on this plate boundary, as noted in the summary on this earthquake. And if you look throughout the area, these guys are no stranger to some large quakes out here. In fact, the largest ones, go ahead and pull that up here, are in the 8 magnitude range, 8.1. Looks like the last 8-pointer was back in 2000, the year 2000, but much further away from the epicenter of today's earthquake. Been a couple 8s throughout time, that's for sure. Nearby, it looks like the 7.1 back in 1989 was the most localized 7-pointer far as being closest to the epicenter of today's earthquakes. And within the region, there's definitely been a couple 7s. And surprisingly, an 8 as well back in 1906. Both of those dates there, 1989 and 1906, whew, those were some California earthquakes as well back on those dates. So little activity, definitely, I shouldn't say a little, large-scale activity definitely ramping up today in this area. And today's earthquake, a 7.6, makes it the largest earthquake of the year so far. This is the 7.0 map and above since January 1st. So far, we've had 5 7-pointers, and of course, today's earthquake, the 7.6, makes it the largest so far. Not a whole lot along the coast here. I'm just wondering when the big one's going to shake out here. It's just a matter of time. All right, let's go ahead and look at the activity here. Focus in the Papua New Guinea area. I do want to bring up the last 7 days of 4.5 and above. Here is the area that's seen quite a bit of swarming here. Now, this activity is prior to the 7.6 that struck today. In fact, this was yesterday and the day before, probably about 36, 48 hours ago. There was just a lot of buildup. A pretty good amount of swarming activity in the 6 range and the 5 range as well. So look at the dates on here. This goes back about the 9th and the 10th. These are UTC dates here, so a couple days old. And then today, we had quite a bit of activity over here around the Java Trench with some 4s, 6.0, and a 5.7. Now, originally, I seen a couple other earthquakes in here in the mix as well. I'm not for sure if they're reviewing them or not. I could have swore there was maybe another second 6-pointer in there. But all this activity kind of kicked up here in the last 12 hours or so, pretty much close to each other as far as the time stamps go. Just seeing a lot of massive movement here within a short amount of time, and it's been a pretty crazy day. I'm trying to think here. This one was at 23:10, that 6-pointer, and then at 23:46, just 22 minutes after this activity, we've seen this large-scale adjustment over here near Papua New Guinea. So it kind of shows you here, folks, what can happen really quickly along the plates. You know, a lot of folks don't believe the effects that one area moving can have an adverse effect over here. And in this case, the Java Trench here is a subduction zone. There's a couple different scenarios here. The plates are kind of moving to the, unfortunately I can't use my draw on the screen pin right now, but it moves into this area, into the Java Trench region as a subduction zone. And that appears as though, as a whole, definitely, as the Australia plate here kind of moves in this fashion, kind of definitely put a lot of strain within this area. And there's been a couple spots here that have not seen a lot of large-scale activity. We've seen some 4s and 5s. Let's go over the last week or so and show you some of that movement down here in the Java Trench. And but there's certain areas here that haven't really seen a whole lot of movement. So I'm kind of watching this area pretty closely here for localized regions. But now that we got this massive large-scale activity, we got a whole bunch of movement, kind of teeter-tottering effect over here along the eastern section of the world here. We're talking about the Puerto Rico area, Costa Rica, all lighting up here within the last hour. These are red circle earthquakes indicating some newer movement. Just outside of the Dominica area, looks like we had a 4.9 in the Leeward Islands. Somewhat of a larger quake here for this area because we haven't really seen too much movement here recently. But now we're lighting up like a Christmas tree, so to speak. I don't know if you got red and orange on your Christmas tree or not, but definitely lighting up here around the Caribbean plate. There's an earthquake there, 4.3 off the coast of Costa Rica. So definitely have to be on guard with this activity, but also at the same time, don't discredit the possibility of seeing something much larger here in this area of the plates. Southern Philippine plate up through the Java Trench. And as always, 7.6, that's a large earthquake. Could there be a bigger one? It's possible. Very possible. There's been 8s, you know, quite a few 8s here in this area historically since about 1900 or so, and I'm sure many more before that. So keep your eyes open here. It's always a possibility over the next 24 hours or so following that quake. Let's look at the west coast here. I'm not seeing anything up in the Pacific Northwest, and I'm not for sure why. I don't know if they turned off all the earthquakes up there, because I'm sure at least one of these volcanoes up here through the Cascades are having, you know, at least a little microquake activity. It's a weekend, but man, you know, I know there's stuff going on. We'll check out a couple of graphs here in a little bit. One area lighting up here around the Clear Lake volcanic field. This is the Calpine hydrothermal operations out here, inducing well, raw sewage down below to create steam and pressure and energy to power homes around the Bay Area. So that area is kind of lighting up pretty nicely right now. Central part of California is fairly quiet. Southern California, we got a couple small earthquakes out here near the Octillo Wells area. This area did see a little bit of rainfall, and not a Not a huge amount. Of course, anything that does fall out here is going to accumulate and stream down the sides of the roads, but I don't think it was all that much compared to what they were expecting. But earthquake activity, there's a couple small quakes down there. Not a whole lot in the last hour around the central part of the state. Some movement in Oklahoma and western Texas today. But just kind of watching it here, folks. You know, general plate movement here. I need to keep this map handy. Let's see here, plate. I could have swore I got numerous pictures, but I'm not going to go dig through them, so I'm just going to pop up here one of these images on the map, and we can kind of see the general movement, so to speak, here of the plate dynamics. So you got the Australia plate, right? Kind of where we've seen the Papua New Guinea activity here. There's a little bit of subduction zones around here. Remember this plate got a spreading sea floor center down there. So this whole plate kind of going at each other here along the Pacific plate, and I think with these two bumping heads, that could definitely spell some trouble back building out here along the eastern Pacific and these adjacent plates here. Good possibility. I mean, you nudge one of these plates, you know, the wrong way or increase pressure. That 7.7 can definitely increase some pressure in certain areas. It's definitely possible that we could be seeing something pop up here along the west coast. Right now, it's kind of quiet, but looking at this Caribbean plate here light up like crazy makes me want to watch the west coast and potentially down here along the eastern portion of the Pacific plate and the Nazca plate area. Watch these areas pretty closely here tonight. But here's the typical dynamic plate movement. It's pretty cool. When the arrows are pointing together, that's a subduction zone. Near Papua New Guinea area, there's a couple different subduction zones. Fiji, Kermadec Trench, Tonga Trench. And of course up here we got the San Andreas Fault, the southeastward movement of the North American plate. And in relation there to the Pacific plate, kind of moving towards the northwest. And of course, the Juan de Fuca plate subduction zone there. They don't have the arrows, but there is a major subduction zone there. So look at this map. It's pretty cool to look at sometimes following these big earthquakes and see what we're looking at here as far as the possible general plate movement here and pressure building up following these larger earthquakes. We'll watch this area pretty closely here, folks, but yeah, let me stand by for here just a second. I'm going to pull up the EMSC model and see what we got as far as earthquake activity goes. Maybe something that USGS is not reporting. There is some, I like to look at these little earthquakes as well in between these two large sections, or these two sections that had major movement today. And, you know, definitely don't take your eye off this region. We could be seeing things fill in here pretty soon. There's that 4.9 out there around the eastern portion of the Caribbean plate. West coast, pretty quiet. Let's go back to the USGS map here real quick. And Alaska's pretty quiet as well. There is some movement up north outside of Anchorage, but that's all very typical along that plate boundary. So, yeah, we'll watch it and see how it goes today, folks, or at least tonight. A couple earthquakes there in the South America region, but this was prior to all the heightened movement out there to the west and across the Java Trench. Yellowstone National Park, I want to show you guys the awesome reading that it produced here as far as the 6s and the 7.6 that struck today. That's the S waves there. And those earthquakes, those large ones there, even 6-pointers, can create a pretty spectacular signature across these seismograph stations. This is not localized activity. In fact, if you were to look at, you know, somewhere along the West Coast, Oregon, anywhere, Sacramento, you would see that same type of reading, pending the seismographs are set up appropriately for seismic activity. So it's not just at Yellowstone. Yellowstone is just an example I'd like to use when pointing out the P waves and the S waves from large earthquakes. And they showed up pretty pretty nicely all across the Yellowstone area. As far as general seismic activity at Yellowstone, or if it's done anything to Yellowstone, as far as the large earthquake movement goes, nothing. Maybe a little speck of a small microquake there, but earlier in the day this morning, yes, there was a couple small microquakes in the area of Yellowstone, but that's kind of been an on and off thing here for about a week or so. The tremor map tonight shows 338 epicenters here into the Oregon area. Now, not for sure if this was prior to the 7.6 or afterwards. We'll have to look and see what this has done as far as Cascadia tremor goes tomorrow. But this is actually a good indication of what type of pressure is out here along the Cascadia. This is tremor, down dip, down underneath the North American plate here. About 35, 45 kilometers down there. The locked area of the Cascadia sits offshore, much further upstream than this tremor activity. But we can see some earthquakes down there. A lot of times we get these deeper Cascadia earthquakes that happen down dip, way down dip, and they've been in the 6 and 7 range. It's been a while since we've had one of those deeper earthquakes here. But yeah, still some tremor out there today. It looks like 338 epicenters of tremor. There was a buoy in event mode. It looks like it's still in event mode just outside of the Papua New Guinea area around the Coral Sea. This one kicked up a little bit. Of course, any type of movement, adjustment, you know, near a buoy station could send it into event mode. And in this case, there was just a little bitty speck of a difference which kicked this thing into event mode. Very small, minimal type of adjustment there on the water height, but that was it. None of these other ones are in the event mode, but there was a tsunami threat there for a little bit. But fortunately, this thing was on land. I mean, it did do some damage. I have seen some pictures and video of the area, but as far as any tsunami potential there, that's pretty much diminished, and the threat disappeared. But this area, you get some 8s here around these subduction zone areas, could trigger a tsunami. Just got to have the right type of earthquake there for that area. Let's see, what else were we going to look at? Let me go over here to the Mount St Helens seismograph station here real quick and see what we got. No earthquake activity to report, but you know, it doesn't mean there isn't any. Just kind of want to see for myself. Anyone can look at this data as well. Let's go ahead and check it out. Mount St Helens, come on. Are we going? There we go. Wow, look at those awesome S waves. And this is just a seismograph there in Washington at Mount St Helens. Let me check out the previous UTC date here. And so it looks like right around the next day UTC time is when this all began. And it looks like there's a little small microquake activity here again at Mount St Helens. And then again, these S waves rattling the earth with vibrations. And if you look at, like I say, if you look at the majority of seismograph stations there, you'll see that pretty awesome feature. We can check out Crater Lake here and see if we got that in there as well. Wizard Island, beautiful area up there in the wintertime. Been a while since I've been up there. This area as well, look at that. Beautiful S waves kicking through the earth. Vibrations, right? This 7.7 thousands of miles away. But it just goes to show you how sensitive these seismograph stations are, and the vibrations that travel through the earth at the surface and the deeper levels as well. You know, it's pretty crazy if you really think about it. Let's see what else we got here. What do we got up here? In Chile, a 4.3 coming in. Looks like just a short time ago. A 4.3. I don't know if the USGS is reporting that or not. Doesn't look like it. But if that's the case, just kind of goes with the saying I was just talking about here, how we're dealing with the adverse effects now here along the eastern portion of the Pacific Plate and this whole area. .3 down there, just right around the Chile area. So we'll definitely watch that pretty closely. Let's see, what else do we have here tonight? Space weather real quick. Let's see what we got. Not a whole lot going on here, folks, at all. In fact, it's pretty boring. So this kind of goes hand in hand. Well, not hand in hand, but I'd like to look at large earthquakes and then take a look at solar weather. Because sometimes we do notice a relation between the two. The sun, the space weather, large solar flares, large coronal holes, you know, a lot of stuff going on when the Earth is bombarded by solar activity. But right now, we're in the green. Everything's pretty stable on the magnetic field. We're not getting bombarded with any solar flares. We're not getting hit with any coronal holes. In fact, activity has been pretty minimal if you look at the solar flare activity here. We just barely had any low-grade C flares. If you look at the last 7 days, we've been quiet. Very quiet. So, does space weather cause earthquakes? I don't know. I mean, we had a lot of activity today. 7.6, couple 5s, some 6s in there as well. You know, you kind of make the call yourself. I've seen it happen when we're getting hit with some solar flares and potentially X flares. Seen the earthquake activity kind of ramp up. But this is one of those cases here where we're looking at very quiet solar weather. The Earth is just, you know, doing its thing. And here we have some large earthquakes taking place, not just in one area, but in a couple different areas. So this is one of those days you can scratch out the solar weather activity and the earthquake relationship between those two. But we keep a mindful eye open, and we'll compare the next events here and see what happens. Just got to mark this down and see if there's more times when we have larger earthquakes with solar weather versus times when we don't. So we'll watch it. Let's see what else we got, folks. I think that's about it. Earthquakes Canada. Let's go ahead and check this out here real quick. See if we got any earthquake activity up north here into the beautiful country of Canada. One earthquake looks like that one from a couple days ago up there in the Yukon Territory. A 2.3 near the Ross River area. But that's about it. Looking at the big picture here, not a whole lot listed up on the map. All right, guys, have a good night. Again, live stream is up and running, and we do have numerous monitoring stations there across the globe when it comes to seismic data. This is all live data being brought here onto my computer, and then I upload it here onto the channel. A lot of times we see some large earthquakes come in before the USGS or the EMSC gets out these notifications. So that's why I run them. Petrolia having a little small spike of an earthquake. That's just around the Eureka, California area. But these little thin spikes, even here on Yellowstone, are just extremely small microquakes. You'll know when a big or even a moderate-sized quake will hit these graphs. But I'm sure the Earth is still kind of recovering from that vibrational shaking from that 7.7 earlier. But good thing just to be on guard, folks. West Coast and right around the Caribbean area. Whole lot of uncertainty at the moment, but we'll continue to report. And we will be back tomorrow sometime, unless something major changes out here. Till then, take care, folks. We'll catch you guys a little bit later on. Peace out.